Rwanda is very exclusive, not exclusive, but it's very, yeah, it is kind of exclusive, but it's very insulated. And so it doesn't have foreigners come in to the country pretty much almost ever. I know we have, of course, the Winter Soldier came in, and you know, we've had one other person come in unwantedly. So we don't. There's a concern and a caution about bringing in the gentleman who was on the gurney, and you know, there's it does present a very, very rich complexity that he is there, and for us in various ways. But definitely over the security of the nation, we do not want anyone to know that we have brought this man into the country, other than those who are present. So for Wakabi to come in, who's the leader of the border tribe who protects the borders of the nation, is a very massive conundrum for us to be in, which is why the Black Panther T'Challa has to go and squash the entry of this man into the space, because he certainly cannot see our kind of unorthodox visitor.
So is that your final scene?
It's not my final scene in the movie. It's my final. You know, we don't shoot in sequence.
Yeah.
So it's my final shot.
Right.
In the movie, which I've been shooting since January. So yeah, but no, it's not the final. I kind of don't even believe it. You know, I mean, you know, I'm number 3 on the call sheet. Me, Chad, and Lupita have been here since November 1st. I mean, we've been working flat out. And I'm kind of like, really? You gonna let me go? Am I really gonna go? Am I really leaving? Because we've been working very, 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 very hard. And you know, you don't even, to be away for 2 days was like not even possible, really. It was that intense. So I kind of am like, well, I can go? Like, just go? Like, I kind of don't believe it yet. I'm kind of still confused that I'm actually done. It's been a very all-encompassing project for me for a while.
What's the tone on set? Because Ryan seems like a really great director to work for.
He is. He's awesome. He's sweet. He's humble. He's collaborative. He's very, very kind. He's considerate. And he's deeply creative. So it's been a joy to work with him. And, you know, we're family. We're basically family now.
So your character belongs to the adored ones, like a bodyguard, fighting class type?
Not quite. My character is the leader of the Dormalage, who are not a bodyguard. My character is a general. Mm-hmm. So she's the head of his armed forces. Yeah. So her job is they are kind of betrothed to the throne. So they're kind of, they don't marry. It is a very, very deep vocation. It's far beyond bodyguardship. And but she's actually, being the head of the Dormalage equates to being the head of not only his military, the armed forces of the nation, but also his intelligence. So, you know, that's something that you'll see very quickly in the movie, that she possesses that role. But she's also, you know, she's considered the next greatest fighter in the nation after him. And they go on. When he goes on a mission, when he goes and handles things, as you know, you'll see, she's with him.
You look amazing.
Say that again.
How's the bonding on the set?
Oh well, I mean, it's amazing. Funnily, me and Lupita are already very bonded. She was in one of my plays, Eclipsed, last year, and we went through an astounding journey with that. I've known her since 2007. She understudied that play when she was in school at Yale in 2009. So, I mean, we go way back. We're sisters. And being on this with her has been, it's really deepened that bond. We've collaborated a lot. We've come together to, you know, express ideas or contextualizations together with our, you know, our knowledge of the continent and things like that, that we've contributed to the story. So we really kind of work like a team. Like I think Ryan once referred to her as my partner in crime, which we basically are. And Letitia, I adore. That's my little girl, because she was also played the same role in Eclipsed in London, just randomly. And so I spent some time with her back in 2015 when I went to see that production and work with them in the rehearsal room. And I always thought she was extremely special as I watched how she connected to this character I'd written, by throwing on some really serious, heavy Kendrick Lamar music and getting into this zone. And I just sat and watched her, and she didn't care who was watching it. I thought, this chick is fire. So I've always loved her. And so it's been really beautiful. Like, we're a family, and it's a gorgeous thing.
Did you have a sense of responsibility within that family to the themes that you're putting out there with regard to women, with regard to...
Oh, hugely, which I'm sure anyone who will let you know that, who talks to you about our participation, myself and Lupita were deeply involved in that, and very specific about how we believed things should be contextualized and we contributed, and they let us contribute. And that I'm very thankful for. But yeah, we always have our eyes on that. We don't know how to. I'm a woman, I'm an African, and I tell African women stories anyway. I'm a playwright that writes that. So there's no way, it's like I can't not be myself. So yeah, but the beauty is that they allowed us to be collaborators. And that, I'm thankful for that to both Mr. Coogler and Marvel as a whole. They allowed us to collaborate.
Were you a fan of Black Panther before you cast it here, and how do you describe the Black Panther as a superhero?
I didn't know a lot about Black Panther before I was cast. I knew Chad from a while ago. Some of his very close buddies went to Howard with him, and they also ended up at NYU Tisch grad acting with me. So we knew we were in the same circles. We knew each other, but and I was very happy for him when I heard he'd gotten this role. But I didn't know the story. I don't heavily follow the world, quite honestly. But it was very cool to learn about the world, and I found it's just an amazing story to adapt. The idea to me that I found so thrilling. You know, as an African, I'm American and I'm African. I was raised on the continent by African parents, and one of my plays, I was researching it, and it hit me really hard. Like the thing that we struggle with sometimes on the continent is we will never know who we could have fully been without being colonized. The colonization process literally puts an entire severance between the people and their ability to naturally evolve into their own specific modernity. And they become inundated and overcome by someone else's concept of modernity and of advancement and of civilization. So the thing that I love about Wakanda, the concept of Wakanda, to me it was very thrilling to be a part of a story where you get to tell the story of this African country that doesn't exist, but it's the one that we would love to have exist. And I think it's going to be a very important story for the African and for those of African descent, because it shows how we could have perhaps been, and we'll never know, but it could have been this. You know.
Could you tell us what did you do to prepare yourself to this role, in terms of physical exercises, in terms of reading? How did you create the character? Your version of the character.
Right. I mean, there was a lot of different things. Physically, of course, we were being trained from the very beginning. We only started shooting in January, and we started training in early November. So the sort of the physical lexicon of the characters was something we were being trained into very, very specifically. And so then of course I did my own personal training just to strengthen my own physique in my own way at the same time. And it was also, for me, everything has to be like, I play a television character who uses a sword. And so for me, everything has to be, what is this character's connection to their weapon? How do they find their flow in it? And my character on this other TV show I'm in is very economical with it, whereas this character I found, you have to find it through your body and through your imagination of her, and she just has more of a flourish with it. It's more to the book, actually, because she's a traditionalist. And so like it was something that was deep. It was on the page. Mr. Coogler talked to me about it the day I got the offer, and I sat down with him in April of last year, and it was really beautiful how he described who she was, and then it was deepening those things, like she's a traditionalist, and what exactly does that mean, and how does that manifest on the page, and how do we make sure that that is something that comes out, and you know, various other things about her that I can't share, I think, that, you know, will be massive spoilers. But I think that, you know, there is something, you know, what I did was, a lot of it is reading, there are so many variations, number one, of this story, in terms of, you know, we have Mr. Coates doing it now, and before we had, you know, the very beginning we had Christopher Priest. We've had so many different ways of telling the story, and so becoming acquainted with those different ways and what out of that fed me and what didn't, you know, was something that I also pulled from. I also wanted to learn more about women soldiers, and so, I mean, there's such interesting examples. I mean, you know, we all know Gaddafi had this contingency of women soldiers, and that was kind of not quite what I was after, but it was an interesting manifestation of African women right next to the head of state at all times, which is basically what the Dora are as well. So it was a very interesting exploration of that, and of course, it's, you know, there is something so interesting about how we were not going to make the Dora like how, say, Christopher Priest had them. You know, and there was that sort of issue of the Dora have been, you know, sort of, you know, there was something kind of sexist about how they were first portrayed, and how they were kind of characterless in the beginning, and, you know, how that's evolved, and of course Mr. Coates has done an astounding job with that. And you know, so it was all about really synthesizing all those things, and then finding who she is in the context of the story, which I can't talk heavily about, but so it's hard for me to go into how I created her. I can't tell you the story plot, but yeah, a lot of it had to do with looking at the experience of military, the choice, the concept, and also a lot of the relevance, you know, the relevance of today, women in power today, and what they what challenges they face and who they are and how they become who they are, but also learning the history of Wakanda was very important to me. To me, like, she's very her commitment to her country and the what she carries on her shoulders is so it's so tremendous. She, you know, she carries the security of this nation on her shoulders, and understanding that from my own perspective, and you know how this country of course does get into certain degrees of jeopardy in the story, and the idea, you know, I'm an advocate for women and girls, and the idea of those little girls and women who, if this country goes into massive jeopardy, won't have the opportunities that she has, get exposed to the sort of things that Wakanda has been protected from, really connected me deeply to the stakes that she was feeling.
Do you think that the story will, I mean, I know there's all type of African griots and African real hero stories, and this story means probably a lot to African Americans because of the concept of a hero and everything else. But do you think that in mainland Africa and expats, do you think they would look at this story as importantly as people here do, as, you know, this representation, this fictional?
Listen, I grew up on the continent, and yeah, we're paying attention. We're paying attention to the lack of representation of ourselves, and it's sometimes it's even beyond. The reason why I think it's extremely special to the African is because we grew up looking at, you know, African Americans. We grew up looking at Denzel Washington and Michael Jackson, and, you know, we grew up seeing from, you know, in Oprah even, but we grew up looking at the African American as the most popular African representation. Our representation, our voice, our accents, our languages, not so popular. So this is extremely important to the African, because this actually breaks that barrier, which has never been done. That this is a precedent that has never been set before. And so absolutely, I'm already being hounded by Zimbabwean press about talking about this thing, because yeah, it's huge for the African to see. And I grew up like, the reason why I started writing plays from the African female perspective was because the representation was so tremendously poor. So absolutely, I think that everyone, African Americans for various reasons that overlap, and Africans, you know, are I think it's going to be a deeply, deeply important film for that type of representation. And I think the fact that we do use an African language in this film, and we are pulling very, very specifically from beautiful aesthetics around the continent that could often be looked at as, you know, not like, have often been considered primitive, and words like that have been thrown at them, but we're celebrating them as something really beautiful and important. And I think that in and of itself, I mean, the African is going to be feel very affirmed by this film.
Last question, guys.
I think.
Do you think it will be political in a way?
Oh yeah, that I can't go into, but there's a ton of profound relevancy in this film to the world we are in right now, and I think it's kind of stunning because he didn't create it. He wrote it before some things were happening, but that's what great art tends to do. It tends to be a forecaster. Great artists they can tell what the weather is going to be a ways away, and so that's exactly what Ryan is. So it's astounding how it hits on so many issues. It hits on global issues. It hits on very domestic issues to the United States. It hits on black issues from the African and the African American perspective. It hits on so many things in ways that are very specific and character driven, and I think will be deeply resonant. So I'm excited for it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
She's going to grab Lupita. Lupita should be coming right now. So if you want to just leave the recorders here.